And we're live. I think YouTube's system is ass now, so you kind of gotta fuck with it for a little bit before you. All right, let me see. So you kind of gotta.
I don't know. Let me check my pulse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm living. I'm good.
We gotta make sure. We gotta make sure, because otherwise we could be talking to zombies, and that would be more like if I was interviewing a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah, yeah. I talk to zombies every day at the job.
So I'm gonna tweet this out. I'm gonna share this in a few places, and after that, we can sort of get into the meat of it. But essentially, I was on his show not too long ago. He's one of the people with the balls to actually have me on. Very few people will. So I said, hey, why don't you come on my show a little bit like later, and we planned for today. So this is that, and I like a lot of what he puts out. He likes a lot of what I put out, and this is a good sort of, I guess, intersection. Plus, we get to do some anti-Comcast action today, so it should be
Yes.
relatively good. So with that being said, this is Rebel with a Cause. This is Eric the Red 79 on Twitter. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I mean, you gave me quite a good intro there. So, yep, I'm the host of the Rebel with a Cause podcast. Been doing it almost 4 years now, so that'll be coming up next month. So, well, like I said, we had Jeremiah on last week as one of my episodes during my vacation, and got a lot of positive reaction from that because everybody loves our wonderful little Jeremiah Harding out there. So,
A positive reaction. That's unusual. But so ultimately, yeah. Let's start, I guess, just while people filter in, because lately my content has been dipping, and part of the reason is we were switching from Comcast to CenturyLink. So, with that being said, you used to work at Comcast. You say you've got some horror stories.
yeah, I used to do tech support for Comcast back in 2006, 2005. So yeah, it was doing the tech support for that. And when people call in the tech support line, they're already pissed off. And then you got to start talking about their bills, which nobody ever wants to talk about, which is always kind of fun. But yeah, their service all over Atlanta, at least where I was doing my majority of the tech support, was just dog shit. I don't even know how they're even still in business over there. So.
So, what was the majority of the calls like? Were they just yelling at you specifically?
No, just basically yelling about Comcast services. Yeah, so like the new digital TV was just coming out at the time, and nobody was prepared, I guess, for there to be a black screen for like half a second before the picture came up. So we would get constant calls about that. It was like, no, it's just going to be a black screen for a second. You know, it's taking a second for everything to digitize correctly, and then dealing with the internet, it was always, slow drop connections, intermittent connection, that type of stuff. And working there was the first time I actually got called the N-word by another white guy, which I thought was hilarious.
Did he think you were, or was he just yelling?
He was just yelling, and he let the N-word slip. So, which I thought was just kind of, I was like, I'm pretty sure we're both white. I don't get this.
Well, that's an interesting sort of seg into some of these other subjects, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I've been criticized a lot over the past several years for some of my anti-racist posting, and by many people who call themselves libertarian. And one of the subjects there is like, oh well, you're just an SJW. But what I'm like trying to get at is that this race thing was created by the state as a caste system. So the guy
Right.
was clearly just used to using it as like a mallet. And
Yeah.
when you're a hammer, every problem is a nail. Um,
Yeah.
so with that in mind, what got you into podcasting, I guess, is a good question.
It was just I had to get it out there. I mean, I listen to all of the podcasts out there. So if anyone looks at my podcast feed, there's like 50 or 60 shows in there every day that I have to listen to at 2x in order to get through it all. But yeah, so when I first started, it was like all in my car because I was driving for Uber part time. So I had like a bunch of time in between calls. So I would quickly like do like a little 20-30 minute episode and get it out there. We tried podcasting with a bunch of friends over here, and we'd recorded once for like 2 hours, and that episode never saw the light of day. And I was like, when's it going to be posted? When's it going to be posted? So I can share it everywhere. And I was like, oh, well, we're going to edit. And then it just never happened. So I was like, okay, well, I just got to do this myself, apparently.
Yeah, right? Well, that's one of the things. Like, it started out, like, being, like, part of things with co-hosts because I wasn't real comfortable, like, being on my own.
Right.
And like, getting that feel for it is difficult sometimes. And then, like, there wasn't hit film when I started out. So, like, fucking, now I've got, like, this amazing tool that I got for free at first, but now I'd like have the pro license because it's so useful. And no, I'm not sponsored by them, but I would take the sponsorship. But the general vibe is that like you work with the tools you got, and sometimes those tools ain't great.
Right.
So
Looking
like
at you, Audacity.
yeah, well, and Audacity does what it's supposed to, like at a dead level, but it's like still woefully inadequate in a lot of ways. Like there are no keyboard shortcuts, like or anything.
Yeah, keyboard shortcuts is pretty much how most people use software these days. I don't know anyone who's hunting and pecking with the mouse, trying to do drop down menus anymore. Even me working in a civil designer, AutoCAD is a lot of text. I just like hitting little two letter shortcuts just to do my actual job. So
yeah. Well, so what was that job?
Oh, well, now it's civil designer. So, literally my roads are my job. So it's that's always kind of fun. And every time I get to that little stupid status argument where it's like, who would build the roads? I was like, well, I'm the designer of the roads. They're not that damn hard. We just got to find a construction company to build it, who's also a private firm. It's not the government doing these things.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people I don't think recognize is that, like, if people don't want the roads badly enough to pay for them anyway, then they don't deserve to extract that from other people. And if they do want them badly enough, then they'll still just pay the same people who were being paid before. It's not different.
Right. Yeah, and the last time I checked, we've already got, millions of miles of roads already out there. So now we're talking about maintenance contracts?
Yeah,
how hard is that?
Fill in potholes, deal with sinkholes, cracks, like so what, like, in terms of that, how many, I guess, jobs do you get regularly, and what kind of jobs are they?
Yeah, so we get all kinds of stuff. So right now my job is focused on coastal water erosion. So I've got, levees, flood walls, and of course all the roads that are associated with that. So yeah, one of the big projects that we're doing is a sediment diversion canal in the Mississippi River, which is supposed to take it's like 2 trillion gallons of water out of the Mississippi, put it into the Barataria Bay for sediment. So it's not shooting it out into the Gulf and being lost forever. So it's going to get stockpiled and used later. So, I mean, this is a project that's already been going on a few years. It's going to take a few more years to complete. And then one other thing that we're doing is flood wall and levee protection for the city of Freeport, Texas, which is kind of fun because that's like right down the road from Ron Paul right there. So
yeah, well, also like you get to make sure that Katrina doesn't happen again.
Yeah, for the most part. This Freeport job was really hilarious because we had one of the engineers who was getting pissed because it was kind of taking a little while for everyone to get used to using a different software system that the Army Corps of Engineers requires to be used. And he was like pointing at all the houses on one of the plans, and he goes, "These people need flood protection." And I was like, no. They're not the ones who got the Army Corps of Engineers to do this. You see this big Dow chemical plant right here in the middle? Where all of our work is kind of focused. They're the ones who got the Army Corps of Engineers to spend money on this.
Yeah, well, and of course, if that if that gets flooded, all those chemicals are going into the the environment.
Yeah.
So okay, so what kind of goes into that? I'm curious. Like, what kind of engineering goes into making sure that levees don't break?
Yeah, so you have to take a look at previous weather events. So there's a little bit of calculation that goes on with that. So in this particular case, we were just raising up the levees 4 feet just to make sure it would survive another 100-year storm. And then flood walls in the areas where we can't put a levee due to constraints of, we start a levee at one, that's going to go down to the ground. Well, you can't do it because there's a street and a house right there. So you can put a flood wall up and basically accomplish the same thing. So we had that in some of the areas, but yeah, a lot of the work was mainly concentrated around that Dow chemical plant.
Yeah. All right. So what got you into that? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, it was Comcast tech support and later Cox Communications tech support. It just drove me up the wall. I mean, every day was the same thing. People are going to call in pissed that their services don't work. And then management's going to get onto your case because you're not upselling other products and services, even though I'm starting off at a position of weakness by saying, I'm sorry for your inconvenience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, oh, but now you're expecting me to sell more stuff on top of the stuff that they already don't like. Okay. Yeah, and then it was like that, and I was like, man, I got to get out of here. This job's going to eat me alive. So I went and got my little 2-year associate's degree in design, and then got out of there. So I've been doing been doing civil design for the last 10 years. So it's been fun.
So wait, so were you doing Uber while doing civil design?
Yep. Yep. I was just kind of doing stuff on the weekends, just make a couple of $100 extra bucks here and there. Because, living in Baton Rouge, it's a college town, so college kids got to go all over the place. They got to spend their parents' money as quickly as they get it. So, yeah, game days for Tiger football was always, I'd at least make about $400 a night on that. So it was pretty good stuff.
Gotcha. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, it's always great to have extra money coming in here and there. So.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm curious because you would be uniquely qualified to discuss this. California recently passed laws regarding the gig economy, and what it was allegedly designed to do was make it better for gig workers. So when you were working for Uber or with them or however that works, I think you're an independent contractor, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, independent contractor. You got to fill out a 1099 at the end of the year and declare all the income that they sent you. If you wanted to do that sort of thing, I guess.
So on that score, what kind of environment was it? Because I hear complaints, but I want to hear it from sort of the horse's maw here, if you got it.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, where I'm at, customers are okay. You really had to watch the 40 and 50-year-old women that maybe got overserved for margaritas at the Mexican restaurant because they tend to get a little handsy. But yeah, for the most part, if you've got some kind of mess up where you go to the wrong address and they're getting pissed, I mean, you can comp them a ride. It's going to cost you a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, I only had to do that a few times. So I mean, over here it's fine. I'm pretty sure in cities like New York and Los Angeles and stuff, that's got to be hell. I would never do that, but.
Yeah, well, so because Uber is one of the gigs, right? But then there's there's the Eats and the Grubhubs and the DoorDashes.
Yeah.
So what made you choose Uber? Was it more competitive pricing or?
No, I was doing Uber, and I was just I think in Baton Rouge it was the only one that the police weren't going to go after, because there for a while it was actually illegal to do it. But city police kind of decided, it was like, yeah, we've kind of seen our drunk driving numbers plummet since there was rideshare coming in. So yeah, we're not going to enforce it. So eventually they had to get rid of that stupid law.
What stupid law?
Oh, that you couldn't share rides. So that was like a city law for a while. A lot of places were trying to keep the taxi cab medallion system in effect. So they would just say it's illegal for you to share your car for money in some places. And then just eventually, their college kids are not being scraped up off of the highway at 2:00 in the morning because they decided to drive drunk. And so now the police are just like, yeah, we're just not going to enforce it. It's actually helping their community as much as you think that it's not. And just eventually they just get rid of the law, and then Uber and Lyft and all those things were operating at full capacity, rather than maybe taking a chance that if you go downtown somewhere a cop's going to pull you over. That never happened to me. So
Yeah, well, that's an interesting way to discuss because you got the voluntarist V behind you, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you're against the monopoly on violence. So why don't we talk
Yes.
for a moment about that through the lens of like cartelization and the fact that like the U.S. government creates all the groups it opposes.
Yeah, it's no bigger example than a taxi cab medallion, especially in New York City, where it's like winning a lottery if you can catch one. But yeah, creating cartels, it's just something that the government does. They got to pick the winners and losers. Basically, whoever's going to go through that revolving door of government and private corporations, like we see with pharma and the military industrial complex and everything. They'll come from Raytheon, go into government, working in the Department of Defense for a little while, getting right back out into Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or whatever. And the same goes for, the Fed. That's just a cartel of banks. That's not even, what you think it is. And unfortunately, trying to chip away at people's hard skulls and trying to get that information to them is an uphill task.
Yeah. Well, so I guess then, how did you ever have any conversations with people about that while you were driving for Uber?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few. I have a taxation is theft sticker on the back of my car, and so that would sometimes start a conversation. It's actually gotten me in more trouble than anything else. You pull in to go get gas, and some department of transportation and development comes over. It's like taxation isn't theft; it pays my job. I was like, okay, yeah, so you're effectively stealing from me. Okay, I got you.
That's a perfect argument, isn't it? Like, taxation isn't theft, it pays for my job. Um,
Yeah,
so you're acknowledging that you're taking the taxation, but you're not proving that it's not theft.
right.
Fantastic. Good for you. Um, so on that score, then, I guess, what prompted you to get into libertarianism in the first place?
Oh yeah, that's always the big one. And I always have to say it wasn't Ron Paul who did it. It was actually George W. Bush. Because that 2000 run, he was talking about all those libertarian talking points. We're not going to go into the Middle East and start nation building, and we're going to try and keep the military on a leash and everything else. And it was like, okay, well, maybe he isn't as much of a criminal as his dad is, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, 2001 came along, and then it was like, oh no, yeah, I got duped.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
okay.
what kind of started it.
So are you on board with the uh fucking 9/11 was not an outside job, trying to avoid the censors?
Yeah, I mean, which one are we going to talk about? Made it happen on purpose or let it happen on purpose? I kind of don't really get into the minutia of what happened because ultimately I don't know. I just know how it was used afterwards. I mean, we got the Patriot Act, a couple of illegal wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, not to mention crawling all over the place in Africa. Yeah, so you could definitely say it was definitely used. They couldn't wait for it, and I'm happy to report that Donald Rumsfeld is no longer in this plane of existence, and he is now
Yeah.
currently frying in hell right next to John McCain, the other warmonger. So
Yeah, right? Yeah,
yeah,
John McCain's tumor was the real hero. Um
yes.
so and like that reminds me of that fucking fucking what was the line? Fucking and as a matter of fact, Rumsfeld, now that I think back, without 9/11 you couldn't have a war in Iraq or a defense budget of world conquest proportions, kill
Right.
freedom of speech and the right to abortion. Like fucking Immortal Technique will always have a place in my listening library. Um so on that score then, I mean Bush specifically, did you like you say his father was bad.
Oh
Um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what like prompted you on that anti-Bush train? Because people talk about W, they don't talk about Senior.
Yeah, senior, I kind of grew up in a household just filled with those little kooky conspiracy nuts, and his name would always get brought up around JFK. And it was always kind of funny because there's certain paperwork where they turned over the body of JFK to George Bush of the CIA, and everyone's trying to say, well, no, not that George Bush. It was a different George Bush. I was like, okay, yeah, you don't become CIA director after only being there for a year in the 1970s. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you should mention that because like if you look in the history, the ThyssenKrupp deal, where like the Prescott Bush had been making steel deals with the Nazis, and then the Nazis are suddenly imported by the CIA and heavily used by the CIA, and suddenly George Bush gets to be director. I wonder why.
Yeah, I'm just sure that's all just a nice little coincidence. He had all the qualifications, right? And yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And not to mention that, but I mean Prescott Bush was also the head of the Union Bank, which was a Nazi bank. Still is actually, but it's, I think they've got like a presence in Los Angeles. There's actually a UBS or a Union Bank building downtown Los Angeles, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think that one might be different. I think that one's Japanese.
Yeah. Okay.
But because like I actually bank with that Union Bank, and I think their first branch has actually jumped in Japan, if I remember correctly. There is another Union Bank that I think is still running though, that I don't bank with. It's like more multinational.
Yeah.
But that one I think started off as Union Bank of California, and in America, and it all originated, if I remember, from Japan. But I'll look into that and report back. But either way, like, so I mean, in terms of that, let's get into some conspiracy stuff. Which ones do you think are most important for people to look into?
Definitely Epstein didn't kill himself. I think we can all agree on that. I mean, that's, even the normies will agree with you on that one. We got Ghislaine Maxwell, who's kind of being set up to be the Epstein proxy at this point. I don't think she knew quite as much as what Epstein was up to as far as the Mossad stuff and everything else goes. Definitely a crook, though. I mean, make no mistake about it. She needs to be under a jail somewhere. But yeah, and then let's see, what else? 9/11 being used as an excuse to go over to the Middle East to start wrecking shop because your oil buddy said so. Vietnam is another one. We had the USS Liberty event from Israel. I mean, all these kind of things kind of mesh together. So all the same psychotic people that were around then are still around today, even though they're dropping like flies here. So.
Yeah, I caught a bunch of flack not too long ago because some normie found my tweet about how we were lied into every war, and then they were like, World War II? And I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
Pearl Harbor was known in advance.
Yeah, known in advance, and you kind of did things to make sure that the Japanese would attack you, like, take away their gas and their oil.
And, of course, set up in an island, bumfuck away from the U.S. for, like, reasons.
Right. There's no particular reason to be in a naval station in Hawaii. That's, maybe a day's trip for the Japanese at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, not like you're doing exactly what the U.S. would later, like, threaten war with Russia over with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all bricksmanship. Just kind of poking the bear a little bit.
It's okay when we do it, though.
Right. Because when we do it, we're spreading democracy, right? So.
Yeah, when they do it, they're spreading their evil.
The evil empire is spreading all over the world.
Insert xenophobic thing about other people.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty funny to me, because all these anti-racists are willing to say that the U.S. were the good guys in that war because they fought the Nazis. Well. Were they? Have you ever seen the fucking drawings they drew? If you saw those drawings today, you would call for cancellation of everyone in the Defense Department.
Yeah. Let's see. Who else was helping out old Adolf there? Let's see. Ford, Chevy, IG Farben with the contract with International Business Machine, otherwise known as IBM. So I got a chuckle a few years ago when they were saying, let's make a smarter planet together. And I was like, you guys made punch cards that corresponded to certain people's tattoos on their forearms. Yeah, you did this already.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of stuff when you start bringing it up to some people's like, well, I never heard about that. It was like, yeah, a government teacher is going to teach you about that. Okay.
Yeah, well, and that's why they don't teach you about ThyssenKrupp. They don't teach you about, like, Fanta because they want Coke machines in the lobby without kids asking questions.
Yeah, good old Fanta. We got the commercials with the dancing Hispanic ladies because Fanta kind of sounds Spanish. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, dude. I always used to think it was a Mexican style
Nope.
drink, and
Nope.
then
Not even close. It's
later on,
German.
and I find out, oh yeah, it's a German word. It means like refreshing, and it's like,
Yes.
yeah, that's the least refreshing thing to find out. We're fucking Bayer, and oh, now we're supposed to trust the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry
Right.
implicitly.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these guys have got dirty, grubby hands going all the way back to the 30s and 40s.
Yeah,
Tyson Krupp, yeah, Union Bank that we brought up, which I don't know if it's still in operation, but yeah, yeah. Hugo
yeah,
Boss, the uniforms,
yep,
he did all the uniforms for the Nazis.
yeah. But people are supposed to forget about these things, and
Right.
they're also
Oh, it's
supposed,
different now. They're reformed. Sure.
yeah. And they're also supposed to forget about Operation Paperclip and the CIA and fucking
Right.
yeah. It's stunning to me that anybody still believes any of this after hearing from people who know what they're talking about. But
Right.
a lot of these people, like, it's stunning at first, and then I remember, oh, this is all the result of indoctrination. Like,
Yeah.
so, what sort of started to break you out of the conditioning? Like, because I'm sure you went to government schools too, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I went to government school and then later joined the U.S. military. you know, did everything that the little small town kid does because the uniforms come around and they lie to you. But yeah, that's what broke us most out. I'll have to give props to Alex Jones. Just kind of listening to him on the side and just kind of putting two to two together, and then kind of looking up some stuff, and then kind of comes out later that he's really just an entertainer. But yeah, I mean that's what kind of broke it. You just kind of learn how to read between the lines, look up stories for yourself. Gather several different sources and see exactly where the lie is coming from. That type of thing. So I mean, it's just a break of your conditioning. So that's why I always like the term unschooling, because you're getting rid of schooling from the government. So you're trying to figure stuff out for yourself. So
Yeah,
yeah, anybody who does their own research and more than just watching a YouTube channel or doing a Google search on the first page.
yeah. Well, Alex Jones was kind of huge for me, like because I wasn't really into like mini conspiracies. I was into like war is a lie and maybe
Yeah,
we should ask questions about 9/11, but I wasn't a 9/11 truther at that point. Like
right.
it was all like surface level stuff. And then like fucking Alex Jones, I was given a copy of a file, and it was like on a thumb like drive, and I remember thinking, this is probably bullshit, but I'll like
Right.
give it a watch because the guy was telling me that like when you watch this, you'll realize that no governmental thing is going to save us. Like so, ending the Fed
Yeah.
isn't useful. Ron Paul isn't going to save us, no matter what. And
Yeah. There's
so
never going to be a knight in shining armor for us.
right. And so I watched it, and it was Endgame Blueprint for Global Enslavement, and then like,
Yeah.
the Bilderberg group. And so like I thought, no, this has to be bullshit. And then I looked it up, and no. And Business Insider was covering it, and so many other
Yeah.
people were covering it.
Yeah, that was an engineering firm I used to work for. That when you were filling out expenses, like Bilderberg was listed, and not the hotel that's in Holland or whatever. They were just saying Bilderberg, and it didn't have like an address or anything. I was like, "Oh, I'm working for the devil." Okay, great.
Well, mind talking about that? It's fine if not.
No, I mean it's fine. It's kind of like one of those things. Was doing oil and gas structural design, and I was just starting out in as a designer drafter, and so they're just going to hand you a bunch of red lines to fix, and you don't really get too deep into it until you have to go out of town to go to a hotel for a couple of days because you're going to go into a plant somewhere. And then when you come back and you're filling out your expenses and you just happen to see that in one of the drop down menus, and you're like, wait a second, and then you start finding who's the leadership of this company, and then you start cross-checking, and it's like, oh no, I gotta get out of here. So luckily, oil tanked in 2011, and that company folded up. So I was like, okay, good, dodged a bullet there.
Well, so oil specifically, you might be able to speak to the petrodollar a bit.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was all the brainchild of one Mister. What's his name? Not Rothschild. Damn it.
What, Rockefeller?
No, not Rockefeller. The guy that was in the White House for a long time. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. I got 42-year-old man brain.
Ah, gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
so I mean, besides the name, elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so this guy went throughout the Middle East and basically said, yes, we'll buy all of your oil, but you have to denominate it in a dollar. And with the proceeds, you're going to purchase some of our debt. And that was Henry Kissinger. I just thought of the name. Goddamn. I'm losing it in my old age, man. But yeah, he went around to the Middle East, and everybody had to adopt this new petrodollar scheme. And there was a few countries that didn't. Iraq and Iran were two of those. And also Libya, if memory serves me. And recent history would kind of tell you maybe bad things happen if you don't do what the U.S. empire tells you to do. So,
yeah, like the Gaddafi situation.
yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, fucking, we came, we saw, he died. Chuckle, chuckle, chuckle.
Yeah, that woman's a psychopath. I mean, I mean, even if you think that the guy was legitimately giving Viagra to his troops to rape women and children and stuff, you still wouldn't get on TV and laugh about it.
Well, and additionally, like, her husband, like, the whole Clinton empire is bad, but, like, people don't understand. Her husband was responsible for war crimes in Kosovo, the destruction of a pharmaceutical plant in Sudan, and generally the deaths of, like, tens of thousands of people, and innocent people, and we're supposed to laud him because he talked like a common person, and he kind of seemed kind of cool, maybe.
Yeah, I got that southerner all shucks. I did not have sex with that woman. Let me lob some missiles in Iraq to take the news away from it. Damn you, drudge. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, so let's talk then about your sort of transition to libertarianism. You ever work with the LP?
Yes. I was the former elections chair for the Louisiana Libertarian Party. I did that from 2016 to 2018. And after the LP convention in New Orleans, because it's only like a 45-minute drive for me, kind of hearing little side conversations going on about Bill Weld being the next guy, and you're seeing Bill Weld all over the place all of a sudden, and it was like, I need to get out of here. This is just not going to end well, And they're talking about donors and everything else, and that was like the primary focus of the previous chair was just getting donors. And then, big shocker, he wants to be paid $75 an hour to be the chair of the party. Okay.
Right? Well, so in terms of that, like, let's talk about that donor thing. What would donor money be spent on, even?
Yeah, I mean, with the Libertarian Party, I mean, apparently it's a little newsletter that everyone throws away once they get it in the mail. So I don't know.
Really? So that's basically it?
Yeah, well, I mean, office space in Washington D.C., because you got to get a presence in the belly of the beast. You can't get invited to the cocktail parties if you're not there.
Yeah, because the cocktail parties are going to listen to you. Yeah.
Right.
Because your family invites you to dinners still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, like Cato and the Cato Institute, gets invited everywhere, and they have so much power in Washington D.C.
Yeah. Right. Well, they kind of do, but only because they accept that Koch funding. And, like, I catch a lot of shit when I bring that up to Libertarian Party members. They're like, oh, well, I'd love some of this Koch money that I keep hearing about. And, like, Spike Cohen's over here being spunk-conking about fucking, like, I can't. Like, he wants to be the fucking, like, new rebellious guy, but he's everything boilerplate.
Yeah, I mean, he's good on some stuff, and then when he's just crap, he's crap. I mean, it's like I can't honestly listen to him, because you're just like, you were there, and then you like shied away from it for some reason.
Yeah, well, and so let's talk about the actual Konkin here, for a second. Have you ever read the New Libertarian Manifesto Konkin stuff?
I've read bits and pieces of it. I haven't actually sat down and read it, but I get enough of it on Liberty Twitter, so I mean,
right.
So, I feel like I read it.
So what's your view on agorism? I'm curious.
To me, it is a tool that goes in your toolbox. It's a verb. It's not something that you are. It's not a personality. Sure, can you make things for your neighbors, and maybe you get a gift card in return that you're not definitely reporting on your taxes. yeah, it's just a tool that you use. It's not really the thing that you think that oh, I'm growing jalapeno pepper plants and pretty soon the state will collapse. That's just not how it's going to be. I mean, it's just use it as a tool, like, because that's what it is.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, would you like which would you say is more effective, Libertarian Party activism or something like agorism?
Out of the two, agorism, because then you're actually living that lifestyle. You know, you're using that tool to its fullest extent, and hopefully your neighbors and your friends are noticing it, and maybe they start their own little side hustle along the same thing. You know, it's even around here in Louisiana. I mean, we've got people that grow things, and that you just never know. Someday you show up and your neighbor's bringing over a whole basket of tomatoes that they're not going to eat. You know, and it's like, okay, well, let me find something I can give you right back. May not be today, but it might be sometime soon, you know.
Yeah, so I want to read you something from the book and get your reflections on it.
Okay.
Like your sort of first blush reaction.
Yeah.
The state's higher circles were not about to yield their plunder and restore property to their victims at the first sign of opposition. The
Right.
first counterattack came from anti-principles already planted by the corrupt intellectual caste. Defeatism, retreatism, minarchy, collaborationism, gradualism, monocentrism, and reformism, including accepting state office to improve statism. All of these anti-principles, deviations, heresies, self-destructive, contradictory tenets, etc., will be dealt with later. Worst of all is partyarchy, the anti-concept of pursuing libertarian ends through statist means, especially political parties. A Libertarian Party was the second counterattack of the state unleashed on the fledgling libertarians. First as a ludicrous oxymoron, then as an invading army.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see all of that. There's definitely people that are in the party that you know, think that the libertarians are going to win elections. You know, that's not going to happen. I mean, even if you're using it as an educational platform, I mean, what use is that? I mean, no one's going to have you on their shows to talk about it. You're not going to get any mainstream press from the corporate press. You know, unless you're Gary Johnson and you're making an ass out of yourself on TV. Uh, so yeah, I mean, if they can't laugh at you, then you'll just be ignored. So yeah, I can totally see what Conkin was going after on that one.
Well, and also he was specific in why he said that. He says the third counterattack was an attempt by one of the 10 richest capitalists in the United States to buy the major libertarian institutions, not just the party, and run the movement as other plutocrats run all the other political parties in
Right.
capitalist states. The degree of success of those statist counterattacks had in corrupting libertarianism led to a splintering of the movement's left and the
Yeah.
despairing paralyzation of others.
Yeah. So he's probably talking about Charles Koch on that one,
Yeah.
if I had to make a guess. Yeah. So yeah, the like you called it on my episode, the Kochtopus. Yeah, their tentacles are everywhere. You know, they're definitely billionaires, and with that check that you get in the mail, obviously their opinion is going to go through. Otherwise, you stop receiving that check. It's kind of how that works.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you were in the LP, could you smell the Coke?
In the state party, not so much. I mean, yeah, the Louisiana State Party was kind of a mess. They had a black guy as the former chair, and so libertarians would show up just to kind of be racist against him. You know, he wasn't that
Really?
good. Yeah. There was a bunch of dope smoking Republicans that thought they were libertarians, those types. And so they got a new chair. He okay, I guess. But we also had the particular problem of Daniel Hayes, little Nick Sarwark's butt shark, and so yeah, I didn't really smell the Coctopus too much through that. Definitely at the National Convention in 2018. Yeah, there was definitely a presence there.
Well, I mean, why don't you talk about that guy then?
Which guy?
Nick
The
Sarwark's butt shark.
Oh, Daniel Hayes. Yeah, that
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, I mean he was all too happy to be a gopher for Nick Sarwark because he can run a meeting. Um, Funny enough, that's where I got my copy of Robert's Rules of Order from. He handed that to me at one of the meetings once, which I just summarily like threw in my backpack, and I was like, okay, thanks, I guess.
So did he hand that to you as a sign of disrespect, like you're not following the rules well enough?
No, he actually purchased an entire case of those and was giving them out to everybody. So,
That's pretty gross.
yes.
Yeah. So ultimately, well, but that's sort of part of the thing. Like, Sarwark is boilerplate as hell, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and all of his takes are washed out in milk toast, and he can't even chop down a twig. Meanwhile,
In
his
flip flops.
yeah, right. Meanwhile, his fucking his organization, like Wedge Capital or something like that, is like
Yeah, yeah.
it is like trying to prove that you can like use the power of consulting to give libertarians a better fucking image so that they do better. Meanwhile, he's doing exactly the opposite and almost always gets ratioed. So,
Yeah,
but that's sort of, I think, part of the point of the Coctopus is that you fund the people who are going to make capitalism look good, not question it
yeah,
too much, and while you're doing that, also make the other two parties look more competent by comparison.
yeah, yeah. They ran Gary Johnson probably for that very reason. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure Gary's a fun guy to have over at a barbecue, but not running a party, and especially not a Raytheon lobbyist as his vice presidential pick. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Arguable that he'd be fun to have at a barbecue either. I mean, he seems exceedingly dull. And also, like, he said the non-aggression principle goes over his head, so he might actually just be dull. Like,
Yeah,
what's
that's definite possibility there. So
what's fucking hard about don't aggress against people, don't violate people's rightly held boundaries? What's hard
yeah,
fucking about that? I mean,
and,
what?
and Matt Kibbe actually made it very simple. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff.
Yeah, well, of course, I will hurt people if they try to take my stuff, so, I mean, there are some
Exactly.
nuances, but,
Right, right, right.
like, the ultimate truth, like, I think a lot of people miss is that when you fund something, you control the message. And when you control the message, you control the action.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, those donor checks are going to come in, and then when the party starts moving in a direction that they don't like, like trying to get Maj Touré to come and speak about Black Guns Matter, and it's like, oh well, you insulted a donor. It's like, I don't fucking care. If they got insulted by me telling someone to eat a dick because they're being a dick,
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
well,
maybe you don't need that cash.
well, and that's the other thing, I think, is that, like, so many people who donate to the LP aren't donating for sound reasons, and it's not like we have a great image to begin with. So, like, and I'm not Libertarian Party anymore. I've been out for a long time because I saw so many fundamental flaws, and because the libertarian organizations were all just conservative. Like,
Yeah.
I was a YAL guy for a long time, and the materials that were printed were always supporting fucking Republicans.
Yes.
And they would get books that were written by non-Republicans, and then they would share those with us. But then our primary thrust was still to promote Amash or Massey or Rand or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Rand Paul anyway, and
Yeah,
like
the win at the door strategy, trying to get the canvassers out there. Yeah.
yeah, and so like I started to get the distinct, and they had this. Okay, so they ran the Nolan chart, and the Nolan chart is ass cancer, and like everything about it is flawed, and you're not gonna find out you're a libertarian by those particular questions. That's
Right.
bullshit, and it's also like really easily manipulable, and like since there's no stable holistic way of judging their metrics, Young Americans for Liberty just put Ron Paul as the most libertarian possible guy. And it's like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give credit where credit is due. Ron Paul did actually get the message out there with his run as a Republican in 2012 and 2008. But at the same time, the Republicans got very Machiavellian about delegates and everything. I mean, here in Louisiana, there was actually a fistfight that broke out trying to keep his delegates away from the state convention. So,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, there was like broken arm. A couple of people lost their teeth. It got pretty wild.
Well, so the reason I bring all that up is because I feel like not enough people understand that problem, and they think, well, it's money, it's capitalism, it's gonna be awesome automatically. And no,
Yeah.
it's not. Like Rothbard even was talking about like how we should be against state capitalism in in the early 70s. He was mentioning this, and
Yeah.
everybody likes to, I posted this quote, and people, a guy with an Anatomy of the State book cover as his profile picture was not willing to interface with the content, and he directly just like insulted it and said it was wrong with no proof. And it was like a quote saying that, if we're to keep the term capitalism, it must be distinguished from state capitalism. And it went over the
Right.
fact that like everything that the current capitalists have was given to them or inherited by somebody who had been given it by the state. Like
Yeah.
they fucking brutally oppressed everybody coming here, and then they like ran the system on slavery and like a bunch of other like awful things, and then they apportioned all this land and all these resources to the people who would become the foundation for American capitalism. So it's
Right.
like
And that
suddenly,
problem only got worse under Reconstruction after the
yeah,
Civil War. So
yeah, because the Civil War allowed for the prison industrial complex. Like,
yes.
fucking Lincoln is not an anti-racist, and
No,
people
no,
who
no.
think, yeah. So, like, I feel like when people think of libertarians, they think of people who acquiesce to whichever billionaire is willing to offer them the most money to suck their cock.
Ah,
Right?
gross.
Am I like, am I off there?
No, I mean, people in the party definitely. But like the people on the ground, like the small L libertarian types out there that just want to be left alone, you're
Yeah.
not really going to find that too much.
Right.
They just want to have a business without a license.
Yeah.
They don't want to be taxed to death. Yeah,
Or like have their grass a certain length.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, so I didn't mow my grass this week. Why are you coming over here to write me a ticket? This is not necessary. It rains in Louisiana and we can't mow the grass right away.
Right? Yeah. And like, lemonade stands getting busted because the little girl didn't have a fucking business license.
Right, right, right.
So I think if people ran more on that sort of thing and less on, for instance, like Thaddeus Russell going off about, but what if the child consents though? Literally.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
Yeah, that happened on Twitter right before this, so I'm pretty sure that thread is still going on.
yeah, he's still defending himself, and he called somebody because they said that an adult-child relationship is disgusting. He called them an imperialist and an authoritarian because they think it's disgusting. They can't think it's disgusting without building empire. What?
An imperialist. It's like,
Yeah.
am I coming over to your house to to annex part of your yard? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, no, I just think a 50-year-old man should not be hanging out with 13-year-old girls. I'm just saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
and
doesn't
so.
make me a authoritarian at all. I'm just saying that's not ethically correct.
So my question to you is, like, because you've been in the machine, what would you
Yeah.
say should be more like their messaging?
More of their messaging should be just live it. And, if you got a candidate out there, definitely hit on all the points that are going to make sense for the people that you're talking to. So if you're finding yourself in a heavily blue area, go anti-war and go all the way with it. It was like, I can't believe these Republicans started this and, they're making the world terrible. We need to be anti-war. Okay, if you're in a heavily red district, maybe don't go after Israel right offhand. Maybe just start talking about foreign aid just being used to prop up, tin pot dictators in third world countries. Maybe after that they can equate the Israel foreign aid problem as well. Also talk about, the Republicans say they're for less taxes, but the Libertarian Party's for no taxes, not any of it. Right. So, you can just have to tailor your message for the audience that you're talking to. More activism. I had mentioned the thing on my show about the Democratic Socialists changing out brake lights, to keep people from having one less police encounter during their time.
Right.
You see this with the Pot Brothers. They're kind of huge all over the internet with the shut the fuck up Fridays and not talking to cops and everything, and have the little script and everything. Those guys, I'm pretty sure not not Republicans, not Libertarians. I'm pretty sure they're very blue Democrats because they're in California. But I mean, that messaging hit home with everybody. I mean, once that shut the fuck up Friday thing hit, like everybody was sharing it all over the place. And even celebrities were getting involved with it and everything. It's like, well, that's actual activism. So,
yeah. Whereas libertarians, like, they shit on the celebrities who are willing to be activists because they're not the activists they like. John McAfee comes to mind. Like, oh no, he said people should be better for black people than women. Stone him to death. He's a heretic.
Yeah, I had quibbles with John McAfee because he's, he was a lunatic. I mean, you can't look at the guy and just get mental stability off of him. But at the same time, I mean, he lived that lifestyle. I mean, he was on the run for tax evasion. He wasn't going to let the feds get a hold of his cash. He had big problems with his software being misused after he exited the company and everything. So, McAfee creating backdoors for the NSA and all that stuff. So, as much shit as he actually talked, I mean, he did the walk too. So,
well, and also his campaign ads were fucking awesome.
Yeah. Judd Weiss did a bang up job in that 2016 run for him. So,
right. Yeah, and like somebody willing to actually say, I support the non-aggression principle. War is murder. Taxation is theft. We should stop this. And having an ad flashing red and blue lights at people, epileptics can chill for a second. They don't need to watch that video. But like ultimately,
we're trying to equate government with the cops because they are.
Well, also like the red and blue lights in this particular thing was like it's still the same image behind the red and blue filter. So like it changes, the color on the outside changes, but it's still war, it's still brutality. Right. It's So I loved that symbology. So but then he dared to veer a little bit left in a speech after he had already not been selected. I won't say elected. The Libertarian Party knew exactly what they were doing. Selected. And like, but then he was like, oh, maybe you should have more black people and more women in the party. And then everybody shat on him because, it's like, it's commonplace to like join the dog pile. So like, ultimately does better activism even help in this circle? Is the Libertarian Party even remotely redeemable?
Not on the national level. I would say if you have a state affiliate out there, maybe you can steer the ship a little bit easier. I mean, we just saw that with the LPNH up there, basically having their things stolen from them, maybe because of Sarwark. Who knows? There's an unindicted co-conspirator out there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's the local level you can definitely get some traction with, even if it's just like your county level LP. You can do a little bit with that.
Well, Owen, I want to leave you with something because I know you got to head out here soon, but I want to leave you with something. Instead of calling him Sarwark, because Sarwark actually sounds kind of cool, call him Sarweasel. It's so easy. Just change the end of it. It's so easy.
Yeah, and he does have a very ratfuck-like face, doesn't he?
Right? It's got the small fucking features. Yeah, fucking. All right. Well, why don't you give like a final message, I guess, and then tell people where you can find them, or where they can find you then.
Okay, final message for everyone out there listening. Number one, have fun with whatever you're trying to do. Otherwise, you will be miserable. So even Jeremiah, I'm pretty sure, gets a chuckle every now and then when he shitposts. I'm pretty sure he does. But other than that, if you want to find me, you can head on over to rebelwiththecausepodcast.com. You can find out my merch table, podcast appearances everywhere. Got a YouTube, Odyssey, and BitChute channel, even though that BitChute video is probably still processing, I'm sure. But other than that, guys, it was great being on here. So anytime, man, have me on.
Yeah, sure. Because I think there's so much more dirt to deal here. Anyway, well, with that being said, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, people, and smash the fucking state.
All the time.
All right, well, thanks for coming.